The night her father traded her for a piece of stale bread. Lysa Hartwell realized a person could die without ever being killed. Wind scraped across the barren flats outside Burnt Hollow, lifting dust like spirits fleeing the earth. The lantern on the porch of the Hartwell shack shivered in the wind, tossing wavering light across the boards that had not known a fresh nail in years. Inside, the house smelled of old wood, hunger, and betrayal. Lysa stood barefoot near the doorway, fingers trembling against her skirt as she listened to her father speak with the stranger. It was happening. It was really happening. Her father's voice, once the safe sound of childhood, cut through the small room like a blade. "Bread's bread," he muttered. "You want the girl with it, that's the cost. I ain't got nothing else to give." The stranger said nothing at first. Only the rustle of his long coat moved. When he finally spoke, his voice was rich, steady, and colder than Lysa expected. "She comes with me tonight." Lysa swallowed, throat burning. Her mother had died 3 winters before. Her father drank more than he worked. Hunger had become the family's only reliable visitor. But she'd still believed, even at 18, that her father would never let her go. Until tonight. "Pa," she whispered. His back stayed turned. The stranger moved into the lantern light, revealing sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and dark hair tied loosely at the nape. He was tall, nearly a full head taller than her father, and carried himself with the calm stillness of someone who didn't need to raise a weapon to fight. His coat was worn but well kept, dusted from travel. A bandolier crossed his chest, though he didn't look like a man actively seeking trouble. His eyes landed on her. Not hungry, not cold, just measuring. She TENCD. The stranger tossed a cloth-wrapped loaf onto the table with a heavy thud. Bread, real bread. Enough to keep her father alive a little longer. The thought turned her stomach. Her father lunged for it, ripping it open, stuffing pieces into his mouth with shaking hands. "Pa, please," she begged, voice cracking. "You can't, please don't." But he didn't stop chewing long enough to look at her. The stranger walked toward her. Each step felt like a verdict being carried out. Lysa pressed back into the wall, her heart beat loud in her ears. He stopped a few feet away. "You're Lysa Hartwell," he said simply. She nodded, though her body felt brittle as glass. Where are you taking me?" He studied her face a moment longer. "Away from here." She wanted to ask what that meant, if away meant another town, another state, or another kind of life entirely, but her mouth refused to shape the question. Outside. The wind moaned across the plains. The stranger extended a hand. "Come, the night's cold." She didn't move. Fear wrapped around her ribs like iron bands. He lowered his hand. "I'm Marcus Hale." The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it, measured, level, with the steady confidence of a man who didn't lie about who he was, sent a ripple through her. Her father didn't glance up. Breadcrumbs spilled across the table, disappearing into the cracks. Marcus Hale stepped closer, his voice softer now. "I don't hurt women," he said, "and I don't own them. You walk or you stay. But if you stay, you'll starve." The words hit deeper than a shout ever could have. Her father proved their truth with every desperate, chewing swallow. Lysa's throat tightened until she could barely breathe. Her life had been shrinking for years, rooms smaller, opportunities thinner, hope fading like dried ink. If she stayed another night, she wasn't sure she'd last another month. And yet, walking out with a stranger into a dark Old West night felt like stepping off the earth itself. Marcus turned toward the door, pushing it open so moonlight spilled across the floor. He didn't pressure her, didn't grab her, didn't look back, which is exactly why she followed him. Her final glance behind showed her father gnawing on the crust as though it were treasure. He did not raise his head. He did not say goodbye. The cold hit her like lake water as she stepped outside. Marcus, weighted by a black horse that stood with a patient stillness, Lysa admired instantly. The horse's mane fluttered in the wind, and its eyes flicked to her with something close to curiosity. "This is Ash," Marcus said. "He don't spook. You'll ride with me." She hesitated. He didn't force her. Finally, she nodded. Marcus mounted smoothly, then reached a hand down. She let him pull her up, settling sideways in front of him, gripping his coat for balance. He didn't pull her close. He didn't speak dot, he simply nudged. Ash forward dot as the house receded into darkness behind them. Lysa shivered not from cold, but from the weight of what she'd left. The hollowness. The betrayal. The lifetime of being less than a full person in her own home. Miles passed beneath the hooves before she dared speak. You really didn't buy me? No. Then why take me? The moonlight carved his profile into something carved from stone hard. Unreadable, but not cruel. Because your father was about to sell you to someone else, Marcus answered quietly. A man who would not have offered you choice. Her stomach twisted. You know him? I know his kind. Silence spread like fog. Where are we going? A settlement called Red Branch. About 2 days' ride east. He paused. There's a woman there, Tansa Reed. Runs a healing lodge. She takes in those who need direction more than they need owners. Should take me? She'll let you decide what you want next. Lysa stared at the horizon, a thin dark line stitched beneath the sky. What do you want with me, Marcus? His exhale was steady. Nothing. Except for you to understand you're worth more than any man ever told you. Her breath caught. Not because she believed him yet, but because no one had ever even tried to convince her otherwise. Clouds drifted over the moon as they traveled deeper into the night. Hours later, they stopped at a sheltered grove of cottonwoods. Marcus lifted her down gently, then set about making a fire. His movements were practical, contained. He didn't talk unless he needed to. Ash grazed nearby. The soft crunch of grass the only sound aside from the fire popping. Marcus tossed her a rolled blanket. You sleep, he said. I'll take first watch. You don't sleep? Not when someone might be following. A chill ran through her. Following us? He stirred the fire. Men like the one your father would have sold you to don't give up easy. But I'm not losing you. The words were quiet, but the way he said them like a vow made her chest tighten. She studied him across the firelight. His face was marked by travel, sun, and old burden. He looked like a man who'd seen more violence than he wanted to remember. Yet something about his posture, about the way he kept distance from her out of respect, not rejection, felt safe. Lysa laid out the blanket and lowered herself onto it. The ground was cold, but the fire warmed the air enough for her body to relax gradually. As her eyelids drooped, she heard Marcus shift, standing guard, hands resting near but not on his weapons. It wasn't right, she murmured, half asleep. What he did to me. No, Marcus agreed softly. It wasn't. She opened her eyes slightly. Why do you care? He didn't answer immediately. Because someone once saved me when I thought my worth had run out too. Before she could ask more, exhaustion pulled her under. She woke at dawn to the low rumble of Marcus's voice and the stamping of hooves. He was standing with another man, a tall, scarred rider with dust-colored eyes and a rifle slung across his back. You're sure it's him? Marcus asked. Positive, the stranger replied. He left Burnt Hollow an hour after you. He's tracking you. And he ain't alone. Lysa's pulse hammered. Marcus noticed she was awake. Lysa, he said calmly, pack your blanket. We ride now. Who's coming? He met her eyes, steady as always. The man your father was going to sell you to. Lightning shot through her chest. Why? Why would he chase us? Marcus's jaw tightened. Because men like Jensen Crane don't lose what they think they own. She froze. He thinks. He thinks he owns me? Not anymore, Marcus said. But he'll kill to get you back. The wind swept over the plains, chilling her bones. We'll get you to Red Branch, he promised. But you need to stay close. And you need to trust me. She swallowed hard. I do. Marcus nodded once, swung into the saddle, and pulled her up in front of him, no hesitation. No wasted time. Ash surged forward. Behind them, somewhere across the rising sun, a ruthless man named Jensen Crane was riding hard with Lysa's name burning in his mind like revenge, and the Old West had never been kind to the hunted. The sun had just crested the horizon, casting pale orange light across the endless plains, when Lysa realized the wind no longer carried just cold, it carried tension. Every gust whispered of unseen eyes, of danger trailing behind them like a shadow that would not release its grip. Marcus rode steadily, his posture taut, hands resting near the reins but never gripping too tightly. Ash's hooves struck the hard ground with a rhythmic certainty, a heartbeat that kept Lysa from panicking entirely. She had spent hours after last night watching him, how calm he remained while the world seemed to scream at her. How methodical he was when he prepared their brief camp. How he never once tried to claim her as his possession, though the thought had flickered in her mind. A part of her, a stubborn and defiant part, wanted to cling to this stranger who had plucked her out of despair without a question. But the knowledge of Jensen Crane, this man she had never met, yet whose cruelty was palpable even from distance, squeezed her chest tight. "Marcus," she whispered, voice hoarse from the cold and stress. "He's coming for me, isn't he?" Marcus didn't glance at her, eyes scanning the horizon, sharp and calculating. "Yes, he left Burnt Hollow hours after we did. He's tracking us. And he's not alone." Lysa shivered. Her stomach twisted into knots. Why? Why would anyone even want to buy another person? Her voice trembled with a mix of fear and anger. "Why would my own father—" "Stop," Marcus interrupted gently but firmly. "Don't waste your energy on him. Hartwell made his choice. You can't change the past, but you can survive the present." She pressed her lips together. The words stung not because they were untrue, but because they were too true. She had grown up believing she was less than anyone else, her father's neglect and greed always a silent shadow over her. And now, riding behind Marcus across the unforgiving plains, she felt like she was riding away from more than just her home. She was riding away from the version of herself that had learned to accept betrayal. Hours passed with only the sound of Ash's hooves and the distant cry of a hawk. The plains stretched endlessly, a landscape of dust, sagebrush, and unbroken sky. Lysa's fingers tightened around Marcus's coat. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked suddenly, almost out of defiance, almost out of curiosity. Marcus's jaw flexed as he shifted slightly. "When it's safe." She hesitated. "But when will it be safe?" He didn't answer. She understood why. There was no time for guarantees. Only actions. Only survival. By midday, they came upon a narrow canyon with steep rock walls rising like silent sentinels on either side. Marcus slowed Ash and scanned the terrain. "This way," he said finally, leading Ash onto a hidden trail that snaked along the canyon's edge. It was narrower, rougher, and far less visible to anyone following from the main plains. Lysa's stomach lurched as the horse navigated the sharp turns. "This is dangerous." Marcus's eyes met hers briefly. "More dangerous to be caught." The wind shifted suddenly, carrying an unfamiliar sound, the low, methodical pounding of hooves. Lysa stiffened. Marcus stiffened too, ears slightly lifted, senses tuned to the invisible pulse of pursuit. "They're close," he murmured. Her heart hammered. "What do we do?" Marcus's hand dropped to the bandolier across his chest, resting near a small, well-worn pistol. We keep moving, and we make sure they don't know our exact path. The next hours were tense, every shadow a possible threat, every bird call a warning. Lysa's mind spun, imagining Jensen Crane riding hard with a rifle leveled at her back, imagining her father's greedy, hollow eyes approving of her suffering. And yet, through it all, Marcus remained unshaken. His calm gave her a strange sort of strength, though she hated admitting it. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the canyon walls in shades of fire and copper, they reached a small, hidden spring, a ribbon of water running clear among rocks and desert scrub. "Rest here for a moment," Marcus said, dismounting. Ash followed obediently, lowering his head to drink. Lysa slid down from the saddle, legs trembling. Water. The first taste of clean water in what felt like weeks. She cupped it in her hands, letting it trickle across her face, washing away some of the grime, some of the fear. Marcus watched her, quiet. She could see his jaw working, the muscles in his arms flexing as he checked their perimeter, scanning for movement. "You don't have to do all of this for me," Lysa whispered. I'm not worth it." Marcus's eyes, dark and unreadable, finally met hers. "You're worth more than you know. And you'll see it soon enough." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, and yet the betrayal of her father had carved deep scars. How could she trust anyone so quickly? They didn't have long to debate it. The faint but unmistakable whistle of wind over metal reached them, a distant, rhythmic sound that made Lysa's blood run cold. "Horse," Marcus muttered, voice low. He mounted swiftly, pulling Lysa up in front of him again. Ash responded immediately, muscles rippling beneath him. "They're close," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "Hold on." The canyon narrowed sharply, forcing Ash to move single file along the path. Lysa gripped Marcus's coat as tightly as she could, feeling the tension in his body through her hands. The distant hooves grew louder, and soon she could make out figures riding in the shadows. 5 men, dust swirling around them like smoke, led by a tall, dark figure she instinctively recognized. Jensen Crane. Her breath hitched. Marcus shifted Ash slightly to give them a small lead along the jagged edge of the canyon. "Do not panic," he said, voice calm but urgent. "I'll get us through this. Keep your head down." They rode like ghosts along the cliffside, Ash's hooves striking hard against the rock. The pursuing men followed, predictable in their path, unaware of the sharp drop that could end the chase with one mistake. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity. Lysa felt her knees go numb, her stomach twisting, every nerve on fire. But Marcus never faltered. He whispered instructions occasionally, told her when to lean, when to let Ash take the lead, when to keep perfectly still. Finally, as night began to fall again, the canyon opened onto a wooded ravine. Marcus slowed Ash, scanning the perimeter. "This way," he said softly, leading her toward a hidden path winding through dense trees. They emerged onto a small clearing where the scent of wildflowers and pine mixed with the night air. "Red branch," Marcus said quietly. "We're close." Lysa's legs felt like jelly. She almost fell to the ground, but Marcus steadied her. The stars above blinked cold and distant, yet they were different here, safer, quieter. She dared to look at Marcus. We made it?" He smiled faintly, a rare softness breaking through his usual stoic mask. "For now." But even as relief surged, a dark knot of fear remained. Jensen Crane was still out there, relentless, driven by greed and obsession. And Lysa knew, deep down, that her father's betrayal had set her on a path from which there was no turning back. For the first time in her life, though, she felt the stirrings of hope. Because someone not her father, not the cruel world, but Marcus Hale had chosen to fight for her worth. And maybe, just maybe, she would learn to fight for it herself. Dawn broke over Red Branch with the fragile calm of a town untouched by betrayal, at least on the surface. The air carried the scent of pine, sun-warmed earth, and the faint tang of wood smoke. Lysa, mounted lightly on Ash alongside Marcus, blinked against the morning light. For the first time in days, she felt as if her lungs might expand without the weight of fear pressing down. "This is it," Marcus said, nodding toward a cluster of buildings nestled between the trees. "Tansa Reed's Lodge. She helps those who've lost direction. You'll be safe here for now." Lysa's stomach churned. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust the promise in his words. But trust, she had learned, was fragile. Broken glass could be swept into the corners of your hands, and it would still cut Dot as they approached. A young boy barely 10 ran toward them, carrying a basket of herbs. He froze when he saw Lysa, eyes wide and alert. "You've brought her?" A firm voice called. Lysa turned to see a tall woman stepping from the lodge, broad-shouldered and strong, yet radiating a calm warmth that made the morning sun feel gentle against her skin. Her hair was dark, streaked with silver, braided at the sides. Her eyes, sharp and observant, landed on Lysa immediately. "Tansa Reed," Marcus said softly, dismounting. "She'll take care of you." Tansa extended her hand to Lysa, who hesitated, then took it, feeling a steadiness she hadn't known in years. "Come in," Tansa said. "You're safe. Ash can stay outside. He's welcome, too." For the first time, Lysa stepped into a space that didn't reek of neglect and betrayal. The interior smelled faintly of herbs, drying flowers, and something stronger security. She felt her shoulders loosen slightly. Marcus placed a hand lightly on her back. "I'll leave you here for the night. I've got to scout the perimeter. Yenzen Crane's men aren't far behind. But you'll be fine inside." Her pulse quickened. You're leaving? I won't be far." "Trust me," he said. His voice softened just enough for her to feel the weight of care beneath his usual calm authority. Lysa nodded, though her stomach twisted. Alone, even briefly, was dangerous, but she had learned there were times when danger was unavoidable. Inside the lodge, Tansa guided her to a small room lined with herbs, a single bed with clean linens, and a window that overlooked a quiet creek. "Sit," Tansa instructed, motioning to a wooden chair beside a small table. "Drink this first." She handed Lysa a cup of warm liquid, fragrant with mint and chamomile. Lysa sipped slowly, letting the warmth seep into her chest. It was a strange comfort. She hadn't felt safe in months, maybe years. "You're far from home," Tansa said, settling across from her. "And I can see it in your eyes. Tell me everything." Lysa hesitated. The truth had a way of weighing heavier than any lie. But she found herself spilling it anyway. Her father, the bread, Marcus, Yenzen Crane. Each word felt like a brick lifted from her chest. Though the story still carried a bitter sting, Tansa listened silently, nodding occasionally, her face calm, her hands folded in her lap. "You've been traded like livestock," she said finally, "but you made it through. And that tells me something important. You're stronger than they thought. Stronger than even you know." Lysa's lips trembled. "I don't know how to be strong anymore," she admitted. "Everything I've done has been about surviving, not living." "You'll learn to live," Tansa said softly. "But first, you need to heal." That afternoon, Marcus returned. He dismounted and quietly entered the lodge. Lysa looked up, startled. He carried a pair of rifles and a small bag of supplies. "Have you rested?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. "A little." Marcus nodded, then lowered the bag. "I need to teach you a few things before Crane finds us again. You can't run forever. You need to know how to protect yourself. And more importantly, you need to learn how to read men like him, those who think possession equals ownership. Lysa swallowed. Fear and excitement tangled in her stomach. You want me to fight? I want you to survive. That's different. Marcus's eyes softened ever so slightly. If Crane comes back, you won't always have me at your side. But if you know how to handle yourself, you can make choices. She nodded slowly. The thought of fighting, of reclaiming her own power, sent a shiver of something dangerous and thrilling through her. Over the next 2 days, Lysa trained with Marcus. He taught her how to handle a rifle, how to stay quiet, how to read the land, and how to anticipate a predator's moves. She was clumsy at first, fumbling the rifle, misjudging the distance of the creek, tripping over rootstock, but Marcus's patience never faltered. He corrected her stance, adjusted her aim, and never once raised his voice. "You're stronger than you think," he said, resting a hand on her shoulder one evening. "Don't forget that. You survived Burnt Hollow. You outran Crane once. You can do it again if you need to." Lysa looked at him, and for the first time, she felt the possibility of hope seep through the cracks of her doubt. Late on the third night, a distant gunshot shattered the calm of Red Branch. Lysa and Marcus leapt to their feet. Ash neighed anxiously outside. "They've found us," Marcus said, his voice low but urgent. "Crane's scouting party." Tansa moved swiftly, securing the lodge doors and instructing Lysa to stay hidden. "You're not just hiding," Marcus said, turning toward her. "You're observing. Learn the sound, the timing, the signs. That's how you'll survive if they come closer." Through the small window, Lysa saw the shadows moving among the trees. Crane's men just beyond the tree line. Her pulse thundered in her chest, but she held it steady, focusing on what Marcus had taught her. Hours passed with tense quiet. Crane's men circled, looked for weaknesses, and eventually, one by one, retreated into the night. Convinced the lodge was abandoned. When Marcus finally exhaled, Lysa felt her body slump. Fear had drained her, but there was also exhilaration. She had watched. She had learned. And she had survived. Marcus turned to her, expression unreadable. "You see? You've already grown stronger. You're already claiming your worth." Tears welled in Lysa's eyes. Not from fear, not from gratitude, but from the realization that she had been invisible in her father's eyes for too long, and now someone saw her value. Someone believed in her without expecting her to be anything but herself. The following morning, Lysa awoke to the smell of bread baking in the lodge. She dressed quickly and stepped outside to find Marcus sitting on a wooden bench, polishing Ash's hooves. "You're awake," he said with a small smile. "I am," she replied. She glanced around at Red Branch, the lodge, the trees, the creek. A sense of calm she hadn't known in years settled over her. "Good," Marcus said. "Because it's time to decide your next move." "Next move?" Lysa asked, puzzled. "You can stay here," Marcus explained. "You can start a life with Tansa, learn, heal, grow. Or you can help me confront Yenzen Crane. Make sure he never lays hands on anyone else like that again." Lysa's chest tightened. The fear of facing Crane still lingered, but there was also a fierce, burning part of her, the part her father had tried to crush, wanting to reclaim her power, her voice, her choice. She began, then swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can face him." Marcus looked at her, eyes steady and unwavering. "You don't have to do it alone. But you can't let him define you anymore. You get to choose how this ends." For the first time in years, Lysa felt a spark of control ignite in her chest. The betrayal of her father, the fear of Yenzen Crane, the harsh lessons of the plains, they had all led her here. And here, she realized, was where she could finally start to fight back. Red Branch was more than a haven. It was the threshold of her new life, and Marcus Hale, mysterious, watchful, and unwavering, was more than just a protector. He was a guide and maybe, one day, someone she could trust completely. As the sun rose over the lodge, Lysa made a quiet vow to herself. She would reclaim her worth. She would survive. She would live. And when the time came, she would confront her past. Head on. Because the Old West did not forgive weakness, but it rewarded courage. The dawn over Red Branch was crimson with the promise of confrontation. Lysa sat astride Ash, her hands gripping the reins tightly, heart thrumming with a mixture of fear and determination. Marcus stood beside her, his dark eyes scanning the horizon where the plains met the distant hills. "You ready?" he asked, his voice calm, unshakable. Lysa swallowed, nodding. I think so." Marcus gave a brief, approving nod. "Remember everything I've taught you. Watch, listen, and move with purpose. Yenzen Crane isn't just dangerous, he's clever. But he underestimates people who know their own worth." Worth. The word felt heavy on her tongue. For 18 years, her father had convinced her she had none. Hartwell had traded her like cattle, thought her value could be measured in bread. But Marcus had shown her otherwise. Now Lysa felt a steeliness she hadn't known existed. Behind the lodge, Ash pawed at the dirt, eager to move. The black horse had been her constant companion through terror and hope alike, and his steady presence gave her courage. Marcus mounted first, then helped Lysa up. She sat sideways, gripping the front of his coat as Ash surged forward with a controlled gallop. The plains stretched endlessly, dust rising beneath them, and Lysa's pulse matched the rhythm of Ash's hooves. Somewhere ahead, shadows moved. Crane's men were coming. The confrontation happened faster than she expected. Yenzen Crane emerged from a low ridge, a rifle slung over his shoulder, eyes burning with greed and fury. Behind him, 3 of his men fanned out, cutting off any retreat. Lysa Hartwell. Crane shouted, his voice carrying over the wind. "Your father sold you, and now I claim what's mine." Lysa's hands trembled, but she held her ground. The fear was there, but so was anger, the raw, potent fire of someone who had been wronged. Marcus nudged Ash slightly forward. "Stay close to me. Remember your training." Lysa inhaled, centering herself. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying the scent of earth and sage, reminding her that she was not helpless. She had learned to see, to anticipate, to act. Crane raised his rifle. "Step forward, girl, and maybe I'll let your father see you one last time." Lysa's stomach twisted. Hartwell had never deserved to see her, never deserved the satisfaction of her fear. She shook the thought off, focusing on Crane's stance, the positioning of his men, the slope of the ground. Marcus whispered, "When I give the signal, move right. Ash will take you." The signal came in a subtle shift of Marcus's body. Lysa dug her heels into Ash's sides, launching them forward. The horse surged with power, muscles rippling beneath her. She leaned forward, letting momentum carry them. Crane's men reacted too late. One tried to aim, but Ash's sudden movement threw him off balance. The rifle discharged into the air harmlessly. Another lunged forward, only to stumble on the uneven ground. Lysa's heart raced, but she didn't panic. She remembered Marcus's lessons. Anticipate, move decisively, strike only when necessary. Ahead, Marcus intercepted Crane himself. The taller man swung his arm, grabbing for Lysa as Ash barreled past. Marcus's fist collided with Crane's jaw in a sharp, controlled strike. Crane staggered but recovered quickly, snarling, "You'll regret this, Hale." Crane spat, raising the rifle again. "Not today," Marcus replied, his voice cold and firm. He moved with precise efficiency, keeping Crane off balance while Lysa regained control of Ash. The chaos around them felt like a storm, the dust. The shouting, the pounding of hooves, but through it, Lysa found clarity. She could see Crane's intentions before he acted. When he lunged, she sidestepped, pulling Ash in a tight circle, using momentum to throw him off balance again. Finally, Crane stumbled to the ground, cursing, while Marcus kept his eyes on the remaining men. Lysa, shaking but resolute, held Ash steady. You? You can't just take people, she shouted, voice stronger than she expected. Crane looked at her, rage burning in his eyes. You'll learn your place, girl. You were wrong, she said, voice firm. You don't own anyone. You never did. And she paused, feeling the weight of her past, the betrayal, the fear. I decide my own worth. Marcus nodded slightly from beside her, pride evident in his gaze. The remaining men, seeing their leader defeated and Lysa's unwavering stance, faltered. One tried to raise a weapon, but Marcus's calculated move disarmed him before he could act. The others scattered into the dust and hills, leaving only silence and the settling wind. Lysa sank to her knees beside Ash, her hands stroking his mane. Relief coursed through her, mingling with exhaustion. She had faced her fear, confronted the man who sought to claim her, and survived. Marcus approached slowly. You did well, he said quietly. You stayed focused, you stayed calm, and most importantly, you took control. I couldn't have done it without you, Lysa admitted, though she realized now that the words weren't entirely true. She had made the choices. She had acted. Marcus had guided, yes, but she had fought. She had claimed her own power. Marcus's dark eyes softened. You don't owe me anything. You claimed your worth yourself. That's what matters. Lysa looked toward the horizon, toward the place she had fled from and the life she had lost. Her father, Hartwell, had traded her for bread. He had not understood her, not once, and now she realized she didn't need him to. Later, back at Red Branch, Tansa prepared a simple meal for them. Lysa ate quietly, savoring the taste of bread, cheese, and fresh herbs, appreciating the simple comfort of nourishment that wasn't earned through betrayal. Your father? Tansa asked gently, sensing Lysa's thoughts. Lysa shook her head. Hartwell? He's not part of this anymore. He made his choice. I made mine. Marcus sat across from her, watching. Sometimes people who call themselves family can't recognize worth, he said. You don't need them to validate it. You already have. That night, Lysa lay in the small, warm room provided by Tansa, listening to Ash's soft breathing outside. She felt something unfamiliar, a mixture of relief, accomplishment, and cautious hope. For the first time in years, she slept without fear pressing on her chest. The following weeks at Red Branch were a period of growth. Lysa trained with Marcus during the day, learning to ride, track, and defend herself. Tansa guided her in healing and herbs, teaching patience and the art of reading people. Each day, Lysa felt more solid in her own skin, more aware of her strength and capability. Marcus never demanded loyalty beyond respect. Lysa found herself talking to him about her fears, her anger, her dreams. He listened, never rushing, never judging. And gradually she realized that trust, long withheld, could exist alongside caution. And then one afternoon, as she and Marcus rode along the outskirts of Red Branch, a rider approached from the horizon this time, a man carrying no ill intent. He dismounted cautiously and introduced himself as a messenger from a nearby settlement. He said, "You might want to know." Marcus said quietly, "Your father? Hartwell is gravely ill. Word came that he has no one to care for him. You have the choice to see him or not." Lysa felt the familiar twist of anger and sorrow. For a moment, the past threatened to pull her backward, to remind her of the girl who had been sold for bread, but she drew in a deep breath. "No," she said firmly. He made his choice. I made mine. I'll honor my life, not his mistakes. Marcus gave her a small, approving nod. Ash shifted under her, sensing her resolve. You've come far, Marcus said, voice low. Farther than most would even imagine. And this is just the beginning. Lysa looked toward the horizon, at the open plains, the endless possibilities, and the promise of a life she could shape herself. She felt strength, independence, and hope mingling inside her. Red Branch had been more than refuge, it had been a proving ground, a place where she could reclaim her life, her courage, and her voice. Yenzen Crane was defeated. Her father's betrayal could no longer define her and Marcus. Well, Marcus was a steady presence she could rely on without fear of loss or ownership. Lysa tightened her grip on Ash's reins, heart steady and determined. She had survived betrayal, pursuit, and fear. She had claimed her worth, and the Old West, harsh and unforgiving as it was, had finally taught her something invaluable. Her life was hers to command out as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting gold and crimson across the plains. Lysa rode alongside Marcus, free from the shadows of the past, ready to embrace every challenge, every opportunity, every moment of the life she had fought so fiercely to reclaim. Her story had begun with betrayal, but it ended with triumph, strength, and the unwavering knowledge of her own worth.